All right, looks like we're live. Whoa, all right. So there was a bit of a delay. I apologize for that. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is John Paul. I'm from bravefathers.com, and I'm here to help you see your kids. And just like you, I've had to go through the course process and I was able to get really good results. And I've helped other fathers do the same. And today, I want to tell you about some new developments that are happening that are very, very unfortunate. And so you may have heard that there is an effort made to change the laws around child arrangements. And the new law will basically remove the presumption that it's best for a parent to be involved in a child's life, provided there is no harm being caused to the child or there's no potential harm to the child. So this is a very important point, and I'm going to touch on a lot of things. So make notes. If you're new to the process, this is very important because this could save you a lot of pain and heartache, and this could be the difference between seeing your kids and not seeing them. Because this is the kind of stuff I wanted. I wanted to have at the start of the process, and I couldn't find. So I started compiling information and working very hard on what to do, to the point that at some point I just decided to get rid of my lawyer because I thought I was better off on my own. And whether you have a solicitor, a barrister, or some other kind of lawyer, this will help you. If you're representing yourself, you must listen because you need this. But I have to make it clear, I am not a legal advisor. I'm not a solicitor. I'm not a barrister. I am not in any way, shape, or form legally qualified to give you legal advice. So please do seek independent legal advice. I'm just speaking from my experience and sharing my opinions on what's happening and what I see happening. So it's very important that you seek legal advice. I always advise that you should seek for legal advice from more than one person. Always get a second opinion. A lot of solicitors give a free consultation, a free hour, and you should always speak to a few before you choose the one you decide to work with. And if you are not happy with the one you've got right now, you need to be speaking to different ones. It should be a constant search until you find the right person, because this process is very sensitive. So you really need to have the right person who is working with you. Okay. Now, so let's get into this. So, as I said in the beginning, the new law removes the presumption that it's in the child's best interest to a parent to be involved. Why is this important? It's important because a lot of fathers, first and foremost, believe that they have the right to see their children, right? And in the United Kingdom, parents do not have such a right. So there's no such thing as custody in UK. Okay, so sometimes people, because we watch a lot of American TV and interact a lot with our friends and associates in the United States, we use their terminology a lot. And I've noticed a lot of journalists, very misleading journalists, used American terms which don't apply, because you cannot get custody of a child in the United Kingdom. The state has the right, or the possibility, or the power, so to speak. I think the power is the right word here. Has the power. The state has the power at any given point to take your child away from you if it's in the child's best interest. So there is no such thing as custody. Okay, so the mother doesn't get custody, the father doesn't get custody. Now, obviously, because a child depends on the adults, essentially, the child is going to live with somebody. So that's why the court gives a live with order, usually to the mother, which then becomes known as the resident parent, or is usually known as the resident parent if the child stays with the mother, or obviously the same applies if the child stays with the father. A father can get a live with order, and that is then called a shared live with order. So that's the closest you get to custody in the UK. But all it means is the child lives with you officially. So just to clarify, if the child does not live with you, the main difference is that if you want to take the child abroad, which is out of the jurisdiction, you will have to ask the resident parent's permission. So say you want to go on a holiday, this winter or summer or whenever, you have to ask for permission from the resident parent or who the child lives with to go abroad. If you have a shared lives with order, you usually have a provision where you inform the other parent that you're living, so that you can go on holiday with your child. So that's the main difference. There is also other provisions there, but we're not going to go into that today. There was a case recently where there was some clarification made around the live with order. It was an appeal case. I'm sure I'll cover it at some other point, but it's not the most relevant thing today. It's just important to understand the distinction, because the usual order fathers get is spend time with, which just means the child spends time with you. So even if the child comes over to your house for a weekend, right, every weekend, that is still considered as spend time with if you don't have a live with order. So live with order, by the way, is not 50-50. It could be 50-50, it could be 60-40 or any other time arrangement, but it's usually not 50-50, but sometimes it indeed is. So even if your child was spending half the time with you and you don't have a live with order, it will still be considered as spend time with until and if such an order is made. So spend time with, unfortunately, is what most fathers get. However, and this is important, there's a big shift towards granting the live with order to more and more fathers. And that's why the group, which I like to call the FEMIs, you can imagine who I'm talking about, or the FEMS, they don't like it, right? So they don't want fathers to have contact with children. And so they are fighting for that presumption to be removed altogether. So they believe that would mean that less fathers who they deem abusive would have contact with children. And while on face value, it might be good, anybody who has had actual experience with the family court and is honest will tell you that it's not that simple. Because a lot of times, one moment, let me just have my timer here. My hourglass, it helps me keep the time. Forgive me for that. So the people who are honest in the family court system will tell you that the father is usually at a disadvantage. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because with the new law, as I see it, again, this is my opinion, the intended effect is such that when a mother makes an allegation of domestic abuse, that would automatically make it almost impossible for that father to see the child. Frankly speaking, I have a suspicion that that law cannot work. I have a suspicion that it cannot work. Because what would happen is a huge percentage of fathers, probably about 80%, if not more, would just lose contact with the children in the country, of those who separate and go to court. And that cannot stand. That already it's bad enough, but if it's cut off even to the greater extent, it's going to cause a lot of unrest and discomfort in the society, and it's going to be horrible for the children who just grow up fatherless, and that's not what we want. It is in the child's best interest to have both parents in the child's life, even though that is not the presumption the court works with, by the way. Let's make it clear. That's not what the court says. The court says a parent should be involved. And I'll dissect that a little bit more in just a moment. But one thing you have to be aware of, what fuels a lot of the proceedings, is false allegations, right? So if you are stripped of the presumption that you have any sort of benefit to the child, a false allegation could essentially erase you, and the only thing that will be left is your bank account. Because, of course, the mother usually still wants money, and the FEMS also want the mother to get money, even though you might not even get as much as the right or an order to even write to that child, right? Because no contact means no contact. It includes not being able to even write to the child, let alone a phone call or a video call, or sending a video, or even a supervised visit. And that's what they are fighting for, which I think is very, very painful to know that there is people who care so little about children and use them as weapons because, it's fits their ideology and it makes money for them. It's very, very sad and very unfortunate. But this is what we're dealing with. So as far as I can tell, the attempt so far hasn't yet been fruitful. But I'll have to double check. I've not updated myself on everything that happened today. But as of this morning, as far as I could tell, the effort had not been successful. So that gives us hope, right? But it doesn't mean you should just relax and leave it, because there are many mistakes I see fathers make in court, and I've made many myself. But one of the biggest things is not preparing properly, not being prepared for your hearings, not finding every little advantage that you could have. So let me explain a bit more about how it all works, so then you understand how such a law would affect you negatively, and of course, to affect your children negatively. So the basic thing is like this. You go to court, right? So let's say it's your first time. Before you go to court, you're going to speak to a CAFCASS officer. And what a lot of people get wrong is they think CAFCASS is the power that drives the court system. And it's just an illusion, and it appears that way if you've not really dug deeper into things. So on the surface, it appears that CAFCASS, makes all the decisions. The reason why it looks that way is the court will usually go with what the CAFCASS says to do, right? So the CAFCASS officer will make a recommendation about what should happen with you and your children, what the contact arrangements should be, if there are any, if there should be, if they believe there is allegations of domestic abuse, what should be done, and so on and so forth. They may recommend that a report be filed, usually a Section 7 report, if there is, a lot of concerns, and they will make the recommendation. Now, judges usually will read it, and they'll look at everything else and say, you know what, I agree, or they may deviate, and in which case they must say why they chose not to go with CAFCASS recommendation. So they must give an explanation as to why they decided not to do what CAFCASS said that they need to do. So magistrates, on the other hand, who are lay people, there's usually a bench of 2 or 3 magistrates, and magistrates who are, again, lay people who have got the judicial power, they've had some training. When they sit in your case, they will usually just do what CAFCASS said. It's very rare for them to go against CAFCASS. What I've noticed is that a lot of magistrates, unfortunately, don't also study the law. They rely on the legal advisor, which is fair, but I think considering that we are dealing with children, it would be fair on the children, and definitely also fair on the parents, to understand a law in more depth. And so here you've already encountered 2 important biases. So one from the CAFCASS officer and one from the magistrates, and of course, every judge will have their own bias. The law, when misinterpreted, the new law, would make people believe, from my observation, a lot of them, that it means basically that the father usually is not essential. They may decide early on that, look, there are allegations of domestic abuse, so it's best for the child not to see the parent. Or if some of the allegations are proven, they will decide, the child, and some of the allegations are proven, the magistrates, and of course the judge might do the same as well, might decide that there is no need for contact with the parent. Now, of course, domestic abuse is very harmful, and there is no justification for domestic abuse. And I do believe we should look deeper into domestic abuse. The challenge is that usually, from my observation, when the mother is the abusive one, excuses are made for her. And I've seen situations where the abuse is just ignored. Everybody's pretending as if it's not happening. I've seen that with my own eyes, where a mother is abusive, outright abusive, even violent, and people pretend it's not happening. They turn the other way, they look away, or they even try to blame the father for it. And I've seen it. And it's very sad. And when there are allegations made, there is times when people involved, professionals from Kafkas or social workers, even judges and magistrates, will literally pretend they are not hearing the allegations. Like they'll stare at you or your solicitor with a blank face, and then they'll proceed as if they didn't just hear the allegations that were made. That is important to know because it can be helpful to you in some ways, which I cannot go into today, but it can be helpful. Again, assuming you have a genuine case. But usually, if there's a fact-finding hearing, you will get a chance to present your side of the story. And that's where, again, a lot of fathers fail because they don't prepare. And if you're not prepared and these new laws do get passed, you are done. It's going to be over quicker than you realize. There's lots of cases they can rush through, so the money will still keep getting made, and you're just done, all right? And unfortunately, your children may be without your presence in their life. And again, I have seen and I know there's a lot of false allegations. Or sometimes the both parents are not necessarily abusive, but they're just not nice with each other, which in a ways that you might argue is abuse, but it's their way of figuring out where they are in life. So they're not like outright tormenting the other person. And both parents do that. And as they get older, as their relationship or marriage matures, they mature and they just stop. It happens. Now, people may argue that I'm justifying abuse. And again, I'm not justifying it. But realistically speaking, people are not always nice to each other. Sometimes people would call each other names in an argument. I don't condone that. I don't think I want to be with anybody in my life who would do that. I've made a mistake. At this time, I don't tolerate it. Just walk away. And I do understand that others may want to stay and work things out. It's I cannot dictate onto anybody what to do. But when a mother is the one calling the father names, often it's ignored or minimized or just justified. And when the father does the tiniest thing, such as raise a voice, he might lose contact with his children. And it does happen and has happened many, 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 many times. So what you need to do is, if you know the mother is abusing you, first of all, seek help, see your GP. It's very difficult to find, but find if there's any organization that helps you. Don't go to any of the women's organizations because they'll usually, from anecdotal reports, they will try to turn things around and make you the perpetrator of the abuse when you report it. Because in their belief, again, usually when a woman is abusive, she's just protecting herself, which is, of course, is a lie. And because in female-only relationships, we've seen very horrible situations, including killing children of the partner. So it's clear that females abuse too. And they do it a lot. I suspect most of the femmes are very abusive and they just relish in the unfortunate pain they cause. I think that they think they're important that way. And of course, they make money and many live a very comfortable lifestyle, taking advantage of domestic abuse situations, whether they are real or misleading or false allegations. They make money from them. So I really don't have much good faith in those organizations, because again, fathers have complained that they will share domestic abuse that's being perpetrated. In some parts of the country, they will have to go through a risk assessment in addition, which is very discriminatory because women don't have to go through that risk assessment, which again shows you the bias. And so, in effect, you will be seen as the bad guy either way. That's why you have to go to the right organization, and usually your GP can help you. You need to have a record with your GP that you've gone for domestic abuse help. So, for example, if you've got any wounds, any marks on your body when you were hit, if there's emotional abuse going on, and so on and so forth, let your GP have it on record. If you need legal aid because you are on low income, you will need that letter from the GP. There is a prescribed template that will allow you to get legal aid, even as a man. A lot of men don't know this. A lot of fathers are not informed that you can get legal aid, that fathers can also get legal aid. So they struggle and they could get help. Frankly, a lot of lawyers are not that helpful, especially on legal aid, because it's limited time. But if you combine it with the advice I'm giving you and your own research, you do quite well for yourself. And you may also choose at some point to just represent yourself when you realize your solicitor is not helping you much or your barrister is not helping you much. But you need to be prepared. So with fact finding, a lot of fathers don't prepare. They think they'll just share their story, they'll tell the truth, as some solicitors misleadingly tell fathers, or just tell the truth, just be honest. You know, of course, you should tell the truth, but that's not enough. You need to really understand the narrative within which the court operates, because there are some things, when you say them, the court will turn against you, or to seem that Cafcass is against you, or the courts are against you, which they can be. But the reality is, the unfortunate reality is, there is a narrative that works in court. And there's a way people look at things and what they believe. And it doesn't match closely with reality. It's like a slice of reality, okay, that the court lives within. And rightly or wrongly, that's what it is. So if you're not aware of the narrative, you will just create more trouble for yourself, because you will not know what the court actually wants to know about your case, how you are affected, how your children are being affected, because it's all about the children. It's all about the children. It's not about you. It's not about the mother, even though it may seem otherwise. It's about the children. So a preparation is what gives you a stronger hand, and it gives you a chance to actually prove the abuse that may be happening to you, or that is happening to you if you're in that position. So that's one thing. Secondly, if the mother is lying about you, you need to have your evidence ahead of time. You need to gather as much evidence, make notes, recall what actually happened, so that you can present a reasonable case, so that you can share the truth, but within what the court cares about. So, for example, I saw, you may have seen on X, a father who said the mother tricked him into having a child, right? The court does not care about that. They really don't care. Even if it's true, nobody cares. You're an adult. The court is not there to resolve your issues. And frankly, rightly or wrongly, that's not domestic abuse. So the court does not care. If a mother lies to you, even if she cheated on you, that's your problem, okay? It's not the court's problem. They don't care. As far as I understand, and I don't have much experience with divorce proceedings, but even in divorce proceedings, they don't care much. It's not something that they are bothered with. So if you go in and talking about, oh, she was cheating on me, she was going out every night, so what? Oh, she was getting drunk every night. Where were the children? Well, they were at the grandma's, or they were sleeping. They didn't, okay, if the children did not see it, it didn't affect them. There was no violence, there was no abuse going on. The court does not care. And it's very unfortunate that fathers bring up these stories, which may be true, but they are not relevant. So your preparation is what helps you understand what's relevant. And of course, that's one thing that I've helped fathers with, because, and I had to learn myself as well. At some point, I realized, okay, some of the grievances I have, the court just doesn't care. So there's no point bringing them up. So that's for the fact-finding hearing. So we'll touch on everything else a bit more. But along the way, again, the Cafcass officer, when they come to you, and I've spoken about this in the previous video, very often that's your first encounter with the court system, right? With the actual court. And people don't realize that that first meeting determines the direction of the whole case. Whew. So if you're not prepared emotionally for that, and you don't understand what's going on, you will also mess up your case, because the only outcome you should want from the Cafcass, the first Cafcass meeting, which affects the rest of your case, and again, if the laws are changed, it will affect you even more. The only outcome you want is for the Cafcass officer to have clarity about what's happening. Okay, from your perspective, they have to be clear about what's going on. They have to understand what's going on. They may not agree with you, but at least they have to have a clear understanding of your position. And usually you speak to the mother first, not always, but that lets the Kafka's officer realize what they're dealing with. So the better you are prepared for that meeting, which is something I can help you with as well, and keep watching my videos, because I'll do a specific video about your first Kafka's meeting. So this is just general advice and tips. So the better you are prepared, the better the impression you create. And because they are putting everything on record, or they selectively put things on record, frankly, but because reasonably you could believe that they will put it on record, you want to prepare ahead, make a statement, perhaps even practice what you're going to say, because that's what's going to be written and that's what's going to be given to the judge or the magistrate to read. The Kafkas will make a recommendation. The more you antagonize the Kafka's officer, the worse their recommendation may be. I've seen some very patient Kafka's officers, and they'll actually give you the best they can under the circumstances, right? And I've spoken in my previous video called "Is Kafka's Against Fathers?" There's a limit to what they can do for you. And you can check out that video to find out more about how that works. But there's a limit. So the better the impression they have of you, the bigger the chance that they will give you the best possible deal they can. And if you antagonize them, then they will give you the worst one that they can find. Okay? They may not even get your case clearly. They may actually believe the abuse if they come in and you are aggressive, if you are angry, if you try to argue with them. You should almost treat the Kafka's officer like a reporter, right? Because they are going to write a report. So a reporter is asking you questions, you're answering questions, you're providing information, you're letting them know what's going on. That's it. Don't, when they try, sometimes they will question you, they may antagonize you a bit as well, they may be irritated already. You don't need to get into it with them, because that is not the time. The time for that is in court. Because also, if the laws are changed, potentially they could make a recommendation that they don't see a good prospect of children benefiting from being involved with you, because there's no law protecting your involvement with them, which there is now. Then there is nothing stopping the court from stopping you from seeing your children. So now, more than ever before, it's important that you arm yourself with the right information, that you prepare yourself, and that you deal with the Kafka's officer accordingly. So I'll touch on that a bit more, but I'm going to now move more to what happens in court. So again, the reason why we touch on this is potentially, if you do things wrong, you may set yourself up to lose contact with your children right at the very first Kafka's meeting. You do not want to do that. Obviously, there's also a Kafka's phone call usually that precedes that meeting. The same thing applies. Just be factual, state information, and be prepared. So usually you have a first, if your application goes through, you have a first hearing dispute resolution appointment, right? So that's where the initial, so to speak, ground rules. It's not the same as a ground rules hearing, but that's where the initial steps in the case will be decided. So again, the Kafka's officer may be present. They may share their view based on what they've experienced with you. And at that point as well, potentially, there may be a discussion about whether it's really necessary to have you in the children's life. Again, I know it's very unfair. It's really unfair. I'm not really here to rant on that too much or to vent on that too much, because you want to see your children. So we have to deal with the unfair situation, right? Sometimes in life, things go wrong, and we just have to deal with them. We can't get angry and make them go away. We can't close our eyes or wish it away. It's happening. It's happening. And at the first hearing dispute resolution appointment, usually there will be some allegations made, and that's why practice directions 12J kicks in. It will already have kicked in during the Kafka's reporting phase, according to new policies. But basically, measures will be taken. When there are allegations of domestic abuse, usually the Kafka's officer recommends that direct contact is stopped. It's very painful to experience, as you may know, or as you may unfortunately be heading for. And it's very painful. It's very painful, especially when you know that what's being said is not true at all. There's no grain of truth in it. And your children are going to be deprived of your presence, and you're going to be deprived of spending time with them. It's sad. And you need to know this because it may drag on for months. For months. Often you may be able to negotiate some kind of indirect contact at that stage, depending on your circumstances. It may be phone calls, video calls, or a written letter. And this is important because at least as bad as things are, it gives you a building block to rebuild the contact you have with your children. Without it, if that's taken away, you have nothing. You have nothing to build your contact from. So if you do end up getting an order to have contact with your children, it may start from a very small block, which should have happened at the beginning. So that is where again it's dangerous. And the other problem is, at that point, the status quo will be such that the children will be seen as have not spent time with you. That's usually the excuse or lie that's being told, that they are used to not being without you. It's not safe for them to be just reintroduced to you, which is rubbish, of course. And it's rubbish because if you were to travel for work for 3 months and come back, we don't quarantine you from the children because it's not safe. You just come back, children scream, "Daddy," run to you because they've not seen you in 3 months. For some reason, when you go to court, it becomes unsafe. So that's why I'm saying that what happens in court does not necessarily match the reality in which you live, but that's the narrative in court. And it's important to remember that, again, you can't get emotionally caught, you can't get angry. A few weeks ago, a couple of months now, a man got, I think he got 4 months in jail for shouting all sorts of stuff at the judge, getting angry with him, and threatening the judge as well. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to be in that position. And if you do those things, it will be very likely believed that the allegations made against you are true. So, again, that's where preparation comes in. Emotionally, you should be aware that this is going to happen. I remember having one hearing that was really, really unfair. It was really unfair. And when I had to hold it in, I had to stay so calm, professional. But when I got home, I was screaming, I was shouting, I was so angry. I was so angry. I got vindicated later on. I was able to prove that I was right. But if I had lost my temper at that time, I wouldn't have had a chance to prove what the truth was of the situation. So, again, the new law can use a situation like that ostensibly to just say, you know what, you're not a stable person emotionally, so you should not see your children. From there, from after the first hearing, dispute resolution appointment, depending on what the court orders, there might be a fact-finding hearing ordered where you present your side of the story. Your children's mother will present her side of the story, and you get a chance to present what happened. And again, there's a separate concept, but you have to make sure that it's things that are relevant. So if you are prepared, because there's a limited time, your whole presentation will be compact, it will be concise, it will be direct, it will let the judges, the magistrate, whoever is involved, see exactly what you're trying to say, right? And that's so important. That's again one more thing that could make the difference between you seeing your children and having them in your life and you being in their life and just lose it, right? It's so sad when I speak to fathers who haven't seen their children in a year or 2 years. I've gone through a similar experience myself. Very difficult, very painful, very difficult. I feel like having a drink just thinking about it, you know? um, so yeah, don't get also caught up in things like alcohol or drugs. You know, um, you need to deal with it. So right now there's a program going on called the Pathfinder, which is supposed to help reform the court system. From what I'm hearing and seeing, overall, it hasn't really shown itself to be a great program. From the perspective of the firms, this is a step forward towards the new law, which will stop you from seeing your children, essentially, if it's possible to make it so. They are going to have independent domestic violence advisors who be trained and work directly with and for women's organizations. So you cannot expect any degree of transparency or honesty from them. I'm certain there will be some that will be honest and transparent. Most likely, they will be full of bias, and I'm sure the people who are in charge of them will make sure that they are biased in their reporting. It's again another unfortunate thing, and unfortunately, the firms think that that's empowering to women because they have the ability to hurt people. They think that's power. We all know that real power comes from love and caring. They don't understand that, and unfortunately, I don't have an antidote to that as of now. But I'm not certain to the degree to which the independent domestic violence and domestic abuse advisors will be able to influence the court's decision, how much weight will be put in. But you can foreshadow, you can foresee that their reports will make their way into the court bundles, into the court documents. So you should be prepared for that. And that's why, again, you should be double, triple, quadruple times prepared for what's coming. You should really be prepared in every way you can. And I'll give you some more tips towards the end, right? As I'm I'm just going off the top of my head here. So I'll give you some more tips on how to deal with your preparation. But these people will be working for the women's organizations, and they will be involved with the mother of your child. And usually their position will be to make the accusations look as horrible as possible. And I've seen situations where the mother had no allegations or they didn't really have serious allegations, and they'll either antagonize the mother or will say, well, didn't this happen? Well, this is so bad, you deserve better, and they'll push the acrimony to a higher degree, to a higher level. And I expect them to do this. And I think I don't have information firsthand about what's happening, but I've discussed with one here and there, and they are very biased, and it's sad. It's very painful to watch them at work. So the new process involves them as a way to help mothers cope with domestic abuse. And again, even if the allegations are false, these people are never going to say what you're saying is not true. You're lying, is going to hurt the children. If the mother doesn't have domestic abuse allegations, her case is really not that strong in court, usually. That's the truth. Because it's difficult to reason why children should not see their father if there is no risk of harm. It's very difficult, So the mother's allegations usually are the only way she can cut the father off as much as possible. So that's why these services and these organizations are popular because the mothers who are lying get more tips on how to lie, directly or indirectly. Now, with the real situations, obviously, with the real allegations, they will also be dealt with the same way in the fact-finding hearing. And for those, obviously, there will be some potentially criminal prosecution, right? But that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm speaking to you, assuming that you are not an abusive person. And there are a lot of fathers who are not abusive, who have been labeled as such, who have been facing false allegations, and because of that, they can't see their children. And again, the new laws will make it even harder for them. So the Pathfinder program, which I'm not a fan of, I've read through the guidance. Actually, I have it on my desk. Don't know if you can see. Printed it out from the government website. So you can see some of the stuff that are going on. Some parts of the UK have this implemented already. Like I said, there is some confusion in several places. And I think even the professionals who work within the system get confused about what needs to be done. And again, that's where your advantage may come in if you understand it better than they do, because then you can steer things in the right direction based on your understanding of the law and of the system. So I want to bring it home, what I'm saying. I want to come to the crux of the matter, to the most important thing you must understand. Because the biggest problem you will face, other than the law and the laws and the bias and the biases, is how you view yourself, how you relate to yourself, and how you act in court. Because even though it's supposed to be about the children, the truth is, in essence, you are being judged. And you may not realize it, but up to this point, you may not have really had to really have a hard look at yourself and your behaviors, right? And I know this is not what you want to hear. And I know there are people who have switched off because they had just heard these words, because I've seen it in real life. But the truth is, those who stay, those who listen, they are the ones who get good outcomes. Because I got a really good outcome from the courts. And I expect it to improve in the future, but have a really, really good outcome that a lot of fathers wish they had. And I wished at one point that I had. And I put in the work, I put in the time to work for it and get it. It took a lot of time and a lot of work. So I'm sharing with you things that I wish I knew at the beginning, because that would have made my life easier and my life much, 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 much better. I mean, this cost me years of my life fighting through the court, and cost me a lot. And a lot of fathers go through the same. You are going through the same. So the truth is, because there is a bias, it's almost as if some people within the court system, it could be anyone, could be a judge, a CAFCAS officer, whoever, the children's mother, will always be looking to find fault with you. They'll be always looking for something you are doing wrong. So this doesn't mean that you should become a perfect person, but it does mean that you should learn how to love yourself, how you are, the way you are, so that you don't get triggered easily, because it's the triggers that get you, right? So for example, one thing I did, I knew there were some things when my son's mother would say, and they would trigger me. I knew that. So what I did was I took a pen and paper and I wrote down all those things. And I allowed those feelings to wash over me. I allowed myself to feel the anger and the pain of being called certain names or certain things being said about me. Obviously, not in court. I did that in the privacy of my own home. But after doing that exercise a few times, I started laughing, because I was like, why do I care what she says about me? Even if it's the most horrible thing. Why do I care what she thinks about me? It's irrelevant to my life. We are not together anymore. We are done. It's over. Done. So then when we went to court and those things were being said, I was able to stay calm, because I had already faced them on my own in the environment that I control. So you may want to figure out what triggers you, because I see fathers, I see them even on X, on YouTube, on all other social media, and I see them triggered, and they do the same thing in court. But that's a trap. That gives them excuses. You know, yes, there is a bias, there is a degree to which You'll be limited. You could use the word glass ceiling, perhaps. But once you are able to stay calm, they often get confused. They don't know what to do because they expect you to get triggered. That's their weapon against you. You are their greatest weapon. And when you don't, they just don't know how to attack you anymore. And that's why you start making headway. And that's where people start realizing that, you know what, this man may just actually really just love and care about his children. He actually is a genuine father who just loves his kids. And in I've seen it happen, I've seen it in my situations, some people who used to be against you or seemed against you turn around. You may even have people tell you directly that, you know what, at first I did not trust you, but now I see that you're actually meaning well and you really care about your kids. And they start to help you. A lot of the outcomes I got was because people were helping me behind the scenes, right? Because they realized what I was trying to do, which is the best outcome. So once you let go of your triggers, 80% of the battle is done. Because now, if you're cross-examined, they can trigger you. If you're sitting in court and they are spewing false allegations, you will not start acting out as if those allegations are true. When you are talking to Kafkas and so on and so forth, you appear more reasonable. And over time, you will realize that the courts like reasonable people. Okay? Because I don't agree with the bias, right? And I'm not justifying it. At the same time, I do understand the fear that people may feel about a father doing something wrong. Because, as you may have seen in the news, if a judge gets it wrong, the firms come after him, right? They look bad in the media. They look bad to other judges. They just look bad. And of course, they are scared that the father will hurt the children. When the mother had the children, you know, it's more or less accepted in the society that the children are with the mother. So when she does something wrong, they'll hush it, you know, because the firms don't want the stories to be really popular, really known. So there is not as much backlash as when the father does something wrong, because that's it, according to them, another piece of evidence that men are bad, right? Which is how they look at things. So because of that bias, your job is to be your best self. Again, your true self. My argument is you got into the situation just like I did because you didn't realize, for example, that the red flag, which we all saw, that they actually can only keep happening if we stay in that relationship, for example. And if we stay with somebody who doesn't respect us, then that makes it look like we don't respect ourselves, right? That we don't value who we are, which then gives that person more opportunities to keep devaluing us, to keep disrespecting us, to keep insulting us, to keep putting us down. Of course, it's not justified, yet that is the reality. That is the harsh truth. So when you learn how to deal with those emotions, how to love yourself, really respect yourself, and be the kind of person who would not tolerate disrespect, not by acting out, but by being assertive and calm, that's when you can bring that personality to court and can calmly say, you know, a judge, this is not true. This is not how it happened. On that day, I was, you know, I went to work, or I was working on a project. Here are the documents, here are my logs. I was not interacting with the mother in any way, shape, or form. Or judge, yes, we did have an altercation. Oh, wrong word. We did have an argument, but I walked away because I didn't want it to escalate. We argued about this and that, whatever it was, and my view was that we should go this way. She thought otherwise, and she got visibly frustrated, started screaming, and I could sense things were going really bad. So I went for a walk. About this, or give some details about what you did. You don't have to go into a whole novel, but give a vivid picture. If you have documentation, receipts, maybe a phone screenshots of something you bought. I think there was recently a case where a father used a receipt from a shop to show that, look, he was not involved in a certain situation. So it's that a calmness that will help people reduce their fear that you will do something bad, because unfortunately a lot of people do believe that men are bad. They actually believe it, right? There's a lot of people who just say it because it makes them money and gets them attention, but there are some who actually believe and are afraid. So because the children are already with their mother, it's they can't really be blamed if something happens. And the new law is being promoted under the excuse or the pretext that because fathers tend to hurt the children, those who are abusive, this law will prevent it, which of course is nonsense. But that's where they are coming from. So that is the number one thing you really have to be able to deal with. So I think I'll make some content on that, because I've seen fathers struggle with this. A lot of people think that it's not important, that you can just sort of play the court system, that you can play a game. You can't, because these people do it all day, every day. The only thing that they don't see often is a man who is calm, a man who clearly respects himself, takes good care of himself, and presents his case clearly and carries himself without anger and frustration and resentment. Because whether it's right or wrong, that just shows maturity, and they respect it. You may find it hard to believe. You may think you were calm, but you were not. I remember my solicitor used to tell me to stop breathing so hard, because I used to be like, I used to go like that in court, right? When I heard allegations and things like that. So I thought I was being calm. I was just like sitting down, but I was there with a frown on my face, breathing so hard, right? And it made me look crazy. It made me look angry. It made me look like, I was a bad person, because those people didn't know me and they don't know you. So your frown will be misinterpreted, because that's the only sliver of your presence that the court gets. So that is a key, right? Now, again, I will acknowledge that the court is unfair, that they lie. People lie. I've seen judges lie. They lie, okay? They do. And it's hard for us fathers to live with this, knowing often the mothers are abusive, or they hang out with abusive men, and our children are around those men, or abusive women as well. A family that puts you down, that maybe turns or tries to turn the children against you. And you know this, and you have to live with it, and there's nothing you can do. So that's why use that energy, pour that anger into your preparation, pour that anger into reading the law, read the case law, read what happened, understand the process, watch my videos. I will, send me questions. I will do all I can to answer your questions within the best of my ability. Find people who can help you, find organizations who can help you, and get all the help you can find. Because you don't want a situation where you end up having a non-molestation order or where's restraining order put against you. And that will just make it almost impossible at some stage to see your kids. If you are not seeing them already, that can really stop you. And but again, the new laws might effectively just end it for you. And it's quite easy for allegations to be made. And if you're not prepared to defend them, and you appear to the court as somebody who they can't trust, they will just make a decision that is not in your favor. And bear in mind, the judge is allowed and will look at you and tell in their judgment why, how they saw you, how they perceived you, if they saw you as a reliable witness or not, if they saw you as an immature person who gets angry easily, who cannot control his emotions, they will say it. And I've seen fathers, when you look at the case law, for example, you will see situations where the father was accused of the worst possible things, right? But because of how the father presented himself in an authentic, calm manner, the judge dismissed the allegations. The judge did not believe because they were false allegations, they were lies. And the judge saw through the lies. You want to make it easy for the court to see through the lies so that he can end up seeing your children. So that's the biggest part of it, really, is how you treat yourself, because that will be reflected. It's a bit counterintuitive, but if you're not used to looking at yourself, you're not used to really doing the best for yourself, you may think it's good to be a nice guy. It's not. That doesn't mean you should be an asshole, which I am, but that's not what, you can be an asshole if you are reasonable. You don't be an asshole in court. And of course, when I say an asshole, I don't mean, I go out to be mean to people. I'm just not always pleasant to deal with. And so people think I'm an asshole, and they are right. But in court, you don't need to be an asshole. You need to be reasonable. Being a nice guy will also not help you because you are presenting your case. There are fathers who lose contact because they are too passive. And when you're too passive, people won't trust you because they would think, how is this guy going to raise children? How is he going to take care of children? When he's passive, the children will walk all over him. They will not be safe, especially if they are little children. We are human beings. We have instincts. And when we feel somebody can't be trusted, we act accordingly. And I understand some people may think I am justifying what's going on. I am not. It is wrong and it is unfair because the mother doesn't undergo the same scrutiny. It's wrong and it's unfair. But if somebody, let's say you're walking down the street, right? And somebody sucker punches you, right? They hit you in the face. And now, let's say you're bleeding. Are you going to and the person has run off? Are you going to be like, oh, it's not fair, what the person did to me, and be ranting on YouTube or be ranting on Twitter and so forth? Or are you going to tend to your face? Are you going to take care of what's going on, heal your face, and keep it moving, even if you don't find that person, right? Because even if you find that person, even if they go to jail, that does not heal your face. That does not cure the wound. And it's the same way. Whatever the mother of your children did to you is done. It's in the past. Yes, she is hurting you still. She's hurting the children still. But that's outside of your control. You now must accept that that's the reality in which you live. When it's raining, you don't say, oh, I wish it wasn't raining, so I'm just going to pretend the rain is not raining, right? You don't do that. You either get an umbrella or a warm coat or both and try to get to shelter as quickly as possible. It's the same thing here. So this is the hardest thing to do and to accept and to understand and to believe that will actually help you. And I think my theory is that the people who work in the system know this. They know that they can trigger you easily. They know that you will be angry. They know that you are hurt. So a lot of the things you may think, there are things that you may think that, that the judge is actually listening to them because something the judge will think are irrelevant, but they know it gets to you. They know those things make you angry. So because you are angry, now you look like an abuser, even when you're not. So that's the most important thing. The other thing, of course, is, and I'll make more content on this, is you have to just understand the law, how it works. So with the Pathfinder program, you can see the diagrams. I should put them on the screen. Forgive me for not having done it. Like, for example, like this one, you can see, I don't know, I think it's, yeah, you can see a bit here. So these are diagrams that show you the flow of the court case, right? Of what's going to happen. So read up on those things so you don't get lost, because a lot of fathers go to court not knowing what's happening. And unfortunately, solicitors and barristers don't often advise as well as they should. And if you're representing yourself, you need to know this. You need to know the full process so that you don't get caught in any trap, because at any given point of that process, you may fall into a trap. So you need to know the traps at each stage. And how do you do that? You do the research. You understand what's going on. You ask questions. You ask for help. You strategize. You really, really need to do that. So those are the main points I have for today. The other thing is, you need to also build a life outside of the court, because the court will drain you of energy. So that's an important element, an important part of it. Build a life outside of the court. When I was going through proceedings, I used to go out, weekends, have people over, have not big parties, like little parties here and there. That's what I like. Met some females, met some girls, just have a good time. That's what I use to blow off steam, so to speak. And you need to do something for yourself. I like reading, so I used to read a lot. You need to do something that allows you to be more present. You need to be fresh in the court. Take walks, exercise, do everything you can, basically, to be the best self, to live your best life under the most horrible circumstances you can be found in. Because think about it. If you cannot relax and do a good thing for yourself when you're in your own environment, when you're in the comfort of your home, right? When you're in the comfort of your own home or in a park or whatever, how do you expect to perform when you're under pressure in court, where it actually is against you often? How are you going to do it? You can't. And a lot of people think they can, and that's why they mess up their cases. More fathers would win if they took better care of themselves outside of the court, and if they prepared. There is nothing worse than seeing a father, and one person comes to mind now, and I remember he used to take horrible care of himself. So when it was time for him to go to court, and another one comes to mind as well, they look almost incapable of taking care of responsibility. So of course they couldn't win. It's the reality we live in on the daily basis and the reality of the court system are two different things. They say they are looking out for the child's best interest. Well, within a very narrow scope, perhaps. Within a very narrow scope. There may be times where the mother is clearly bad, and I've seen it for the children. They would rather stay with that, maintain the status quo, than change it, because again, they do have a bias against men, and they do believe it's best that children stay with the mother. It's just a common belief. And it used to be law. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier today, but it used to be law from one of the appeal courts, and I will find that the judgment is no more valid, but it used to be, where they believed you have to do everything in your power to help the mother, except in cases where she's not fit to be a mother. And that's also unfortunate, because that creates an incentive for fathers to show that the mother is not fit, and then the children just get caught up in the crossfire. So it is a horrible system. It is a horrible system, but I think what makes it horrible is the inherent dishonesty from a lot of people who work in the system. And then those who want to be honest often come under negative attacks. Again, as you can see in the news, anytime they rightfully decide that the mother should not be the one who the children would live with, that person is painted horribly. again, it's happening in the news right now. I'm not the biggest fan of the head of the family division, but I'm also biggest opponent. I've read a lot of the decisions, and a lot of their decisions were good and were helpful to children and made children's lives better. So I cannot say, he was the worst person on the planet. He's about to retire in a few months, but he's under attack because he didn't give the firms everything they wanted. And that is the problem. Some of his decisions were attacked. I won't repeat them here now because it will take us into yet another direction. But those were the decisions he made after careful consideration. And if the head of the family division can be attacked, so can be magistrates and judges. So that's why you have to understand why you have to present the best case possible, so that when people stick their necks out for you, I'm just checking if there are questions. If fathers somebody sticks their neck out for you, that it will be justified. So to end, I just want to say, look, I'm very sorry you're going through this. I really hope things do get better. I usually give people an hour of my time free of charge to help them understand their case, to help answer the most important questions the best way I can. If I can't answer them, if I don't have the answers, I will tell you. Prepare, be aware of the new laws that are happening, take good care of yourself, stay tuned. If you don't follow me, subscribe, like the video, share it with people. More importantly, get some rest from this, do something good for yourself, and then take a piece of pen and paper and write down the things that affect you, things that hate you, things that trigger you, and grieve them. Because that grieving process will relieve you a lot, and it will give you the energy to be a better father and to put up a better fight in court, so that your children can get the best outcome by having as much of you in their lives as possible. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Check out my other videos, and also go visit bravefathers.com for more help. My name is John Paul. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to sign out.